agriculture, we've gotten really good at producing more and more from every acre. But there's a major problem that's almost hidden in plain sight, which keeps production from reaching the market and takes dollars straight out of farmers' pockets. That problem is harvest loss.
We leave close to $3 billion worth of corn in the field. And that's just the United States, just corn, just 1 year. So what does that look like in multiple crops around the world every year? It's a huge number. So there's a ton of opportunity for artificial intelligence to help.
That's Craig Ganssle, founder of Farmwave. And while he used corn as the example there, the problem is happening in most major crops. He has a great story of not only reducing food loss and waste, but also showing where artificial intelligence can add real value on the farm.
Farmers spend so much time, resources, energy, putting everything in the ground at the beginning of the season, caring for it all season long. When it's time to get it out, don't just roll through the field and hope for the best. We wanted to empower them during that time.
Artificial intelligence is already adding real value to the farm, and it's just the beginning. Craig Ganssle shares the story of Farmwave on today's Future of Agriculture podcast. Hello, fellow Ag Nerd. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Future of Agriculture. My name is Tim Hammerich, and every week you and I get to hear from the founders, farmers, innovators, and investors, the people shaping the future of the ag industry. Now, before we dive in, I want to thank our quarterly presenting sponsor, which is a company that tells you what you don't want to know. Every 3 seconds, Farmwave's Harvest Vision system is counting your harvest losses off the header and from the combine and reporting them to you in the cab in real time. Make changes on the fly and watch your loss counts drop without having to stop or do manual harvest loss counts again. Models are currently available in corn and soybeans with several other crops in development for release soon. But don't take my word for it. Listen to an actual Farmwave customer.
The system came to me about a week after we had started doing soybeans. I had about 300 acres already through the machine at this point, and we got into that field and started going, and the system started showing you got loss out the back. The fan was set maybe just a little bit too fast. We went from non-irrigated beans to irrigated beans, so the yield was a little higher. I changed 1 millimeter on the sieve and slowed the fan down 50 RPMs. That immediately changed about 4 bushel back into the tank. It changed everything. I don't know how long I would have run in that field had I not had that and gone, I need to make a change.
Join the ranks of farmers deploying Harvest Vision in their fields to ensure no bushel gets left behind. Put AI to work on your farm. Just visit farmwave.io to chat with one of their experts or locate a dealer near you. Thank you so much to Farmwave for supporting farm innovation and the Future of Agriculture podcast. All right, now back to today's episode where you're going to learn a whole lot more about that technology, but also some broader perspective on artificial intelligence in agriculture and how to build an ag tech company that adds real value to farmer customers. That's going to be a very central theme in today's episode. Farmwave founder and CEO Craig Ganssle, of course, is my guest today. Craig first appeared on this show back in episode 237 in late 2020, where we talked quite a bit about Craig's military and technology background and how he's applied that in agriculture. Today, we're going to focus more on creating that real value for farmer customers, the role of artificial intelligence, and the journey of a successful ag tech entrepreneur. Side note here is that Craig is very open about his journey and the lessons he's learned along the way. So any of you listening that either are building or operating or want to have a business in agriculture are going to be able to pull some gems from today's episode. If you're still a little bit fuzzy on what Farmwave does, the most succinct way to sum it up is to say that they've built an autonomous harvest loss system that uses cameras and vision-based AI to detect harvest loss in real time and deliver those results in the cab in real time without ever having to stop. So a farmer, if you haven't operated a combine, might monitor their loss by stopping, getting out and checking what might be left behind, and then adjusting their settings and kind of deciding when they think they are minimizing that. This actually tells them in the moment. when they can adjust and actually save bushels. Craig first discovered artificial intelligence while serving in the United States Marine Corps as an intelligence communications operator with the Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC. He was later honorably discharged in 2001 for medical reasons. Craig then spent 15 years as a senior engineer with Verizon Wireless before eventually founding Farmwave. A lot of great stuff in here, as I said, but I wanted to start straight with the artificial intelligence stuff and find out Craig's perspective, how he thinks about the role of artificial intelligence in the future of agriculture.
It is truly all about the value. If there's no value there, then what are we building the tech for, and what do we expect the user to use it for, right? It's got to have some kind of value for them to adopt it into their routine and to their, existing processes. And the value piece is something that I personally think is missing in a lot of use cases across the board, not just agriculture, but with AI. AI and automation, yes, it makes things more efficient and people more productive and systems more productive, but it changed the business models. The business models of tech have changed. It's really difficult, if not near impossible, to offer up AI on a monthly subscription basis. It just doesn't work that way. There is a lot that has to go into building it if you're going to do it right, such as, hey, we need to collect data, right? So we start out, I remember the first farm we ever went on, right? Winnetah, Indiana was Jacob Smoker. And he'll tell you, we came out and he's like, what are these guys doing, putting this stuff all over the combine? And, we weren't selling anything. We didn't ask them for any money. It was just, we just ride, with these cameras on the machine and collect data. And here's where we're trying to go with it. And he understood it and he let us do it. He was happy to do it. He was like, well, I'll keep in touch. I'd love to see if this actually turns into anything, right? And here we are like 8 years later, and it has. But that's how it all started. It started with, we had a vision, but had to collect all this data. And then the hardware challenges. 8 years ago, hardware we used is not what we use today. And then you have to reiterate on that multiple times. And so it's a process for sure. So it's about, you got to collect the data, go back to the drawing board, work on your AI models, test them, which we do through prototyping out in the field. But during that process, your business side of the house is going, what's the value here? What is the value going to be to the grower? I think for anybody that listens to the first time I was on your podcast, we talked about how we had early stuff with Google Glass and mobile devices, and we were looking at disease and pest. And yeah, we were able to do this stuff with Google Glass and then with a smartphone, but we honestly didn't see the value. And I don't think anybody else did either. It was kind of neat. It was cool. Maybe it saved a little bit of time, but what was the real value? What was the return on investment that was somebody going to see more than just, oh, it might save me a little bit of time? And that value was different in the United States than it was in India, than it was in the Middle East, than it was in Europe for different people. Now that we've put this to an actual problem and we could put real numbers behind it, like, okay, if this is taking a picture every 3 seconds, 3 cameras, that's 144 times an acre that it's doing counts that a human just wouldn't be doing, 12 to 20,000 images in a single day. If we're seeing X number of losses and they can make the adjustments to save them, what are they going to see back, right? And through testing, we found it was going to be 5 to 8 more bushels per acre, and in many cases more. Now you can put a number to that. Now that is value right back in the farmer's pocket. And one of our systems at $20,000, if you do about 600 acres of soybeans, pays for itself in season 1.
And that's so compelling, but it also strikes me that you've gone even further than that, in that you have the data to support the actual return on investment, but you also have the intimate knowledge of how things work. So like every farmer you talk to, I'm sure, knows that feeling of like, I got to stop, I got to get out, I got to look, I got to go a little ways, I got to stop, I got to get out, and I got to look. And I still don't know if I'm really getting this optimal or if I'm just, it's that whole psychology that must play a big factor in when the light bulb comes on for your customers.
It does. And conditions change from the morning to the afternoon to the evening. So how many times are they really stopping to get out? When we go to shows and stuff, our chief operations officer, Brian Wiersma, he tells people when they walk by the booth or something, he goes, they ask, what do you guys do? And he's like, we tell you 140 times an acre what you don't want to know. And they just laugh because they know that's true. I don't want to know, but I should, right? I should know what we're losing. Farmers spend so much time, resources, energy, putting everything in the ground at the beginning of the season, caring for it all season long. When it's time to get it out, don't just roll through the field and hope for the best. We wanted to empower them during that time because it's difficult. It's difficult to get out and scratch around in the dirt and figure out, well, where did this loss come from? Or look at strike plate sensors, which really just kind of bounce up and down, don't have anything to do with the header loss, only the combine, sometimes get clogged up and you have to stop and get out and unclog them so that they give you good accuracy. Drop pans are also pretty good, but you still have to stop and get out and go through the pan. And farmers are like, I just got to go. And for us, it was, how do we solve the problem of just letting them go so that they'll do it? The farmers do get it pretty quick when we tell them they do. Sometimes they're like, that's too good to be true, and we'll show you. But that's what it's all about, right? It's about that value. And I think we need to see more of that, not just in agriculture, all across the board with AI.
Yeah. No, well put. And I mean, as far as this offering, this value, you kind of had this in place already in our last interview, which would have been like going on 3 years ago, December of 2020, I think is when it came out. So talk to us kind of, the whole world has sort of changed in the last few years in many ways. Talk to us about kind of what's changed with Farmwave, or what's sort of top of mind today for the company.
Yes, the world definitely changed during that time. It changed for us. We had a slowdown. We had a lot of projects in place, and travel bans happened with a lot of the companies we were dealing with. So those projects never happened. But we used that time to go back to the basics, continue refining not just the AI, but our hardware, our form factor, which is not really our forte, right? We focus on the AI and the software, but getting some advice, some help from people, our advisory board, which is all farmers, on the form factor. We put out an early minimum viable product, got more feedback, collected more data, and then refined to where we have landed today, which is bringing it to market, expanding our crops, working through the dealer networks, working with OEMs, some that we're beginning channel partner relationships with, to integrate more into the machine, to connect with APIs and pull data into Farmwave to make it more accurate and add more value. But as of today, we're at 74 dealer locations in the United States, partnerships in South America, Australia, Canada, and some happening in parts of Europe as well. But it's been a crazy past 3 years with what's going on around the world. But that look for value, that doesn't change. Everybody's still looking for value, and we always will. And we just wanted to make sure that constantly stays at the forefront of what we're offering, because it's not just about building tech for the sake of building tech and being like, here's what we built, go see if it can solve something for you. That's not where AI is going to be valuable. It's, let's identify a specific problem. Can we fix it? What are the steps to fixing it? How can artificial intelligence possibly streamline and accelerate fixing that problem? And you really do have to tackle it one problem at a time.
Absolutely. And I mean, and it's significant to me that you can give your whole pitch without even mentioning AI. It doesn't matter unless somebody keeps asking questions like I do, which is like, well, how do you do that? Or how does that work? But as far as to articulating the value, AI doesn't need to be anywhere in the conversation. And that seems to be rare. Like on some level, I feel like what I'm saying is obvious, but I don't know that that's all too common with a lot of the AI, at least in ag tech, that I'm seeing today.
Yeah, in ag tech, outside of ag tech, it's kind of everywhere. Everybody wants to talk about some platform and artificial intelligence and all these buzzwords. And like I said, they're kind of building something like, look what we built. Here, use it. But for what? What am I using it for? Just for the sake of using it? I don't have time for that. It's not worth it for me, right? Where's the value? What's in it for me? And we've approached it from listening to the farmers, hearing about problems, taking a step back and going, what we once used on Google Glass and a mobile device, we can put that on machinery and really solve this problem. But moreover, what's the value to the farmer for that? Before we ever started writing code, it's back to that value of, as a tech company, there's just been a lot of uphill battle that we've had to fight, from stigma, from, a lot of overpromise, underdeliver, over the past several years from other companies, and everything was AI. Look what we're doing. And we don't really have to mention that, right? It's what's the problem? What are we solving for, and the value? And if somebody says, well, how are you doing it? Well, that's where we're using artificial intelligence, right, to build it. But really, it's just about saving them money on what they've worked so hard for all year long. How let's get the most out of it, at the end of the season.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned, a lot of farmers you talk to will get the concept instantly. Some of them might say, boy, that sounds too good to be true. And that's where I think it's really important to try to develop, trust, right, among those farmers to say, well, how can we show you? How can we prove ourselves to you? So a two-part question with that. Number one, how do you do that? But number two, how do you scale that?
Yeah, the first part is you got to get out in the field. You have to get out in the field. I've been all over the world, like out in the field, riding with customers in the combine, even without Farmwave, just riding, right? As we get to a new crop, like peanuts and cotton, all right, let's get out and see how they do this, because it's not the same as corn and beans and wheat. So we get out and we figure it out. And then we ask them, what are some of the problems that you have, like in cotton? Because now you get into things like bale weight, and it's different. You're looking at something in the front and they leave a lot in the back. So how do you determine whether it's worth the diesel to go back and run that field again in cotton? Because they can, balloons, bags, trash, things like that. Learning about those problems from them by getting out in the field. You just got to get out. And everybody here at Farmwave gets out in the field. I've been out with people, and a week will go by and they don't even ask, but then something that comes up and they're like, so what do you do at Farmwave? Are you just sales? And I'm like, well, I'm the founder of the company. And they're like, and you're out here? Yeah, this is where I belong, out here. Like, I can't help you from behind a desk somewhere. I mean, I know it's important in my job to go through numbers and spreadsheets. I don't really like it, but I get out in the field. And I think the way that you scale that is consistency. And look, there's a real cost to that for us. There's an investment for that. So we have to fly ourselves at our expense around the world and spend time, meals and hotels and travel in the field. But you just have to do it. It's just part of the cost of doing business in this, because we have to build their trust, right? I want to shake hands with people and look them in the eye and let them know who I am as a person, and be like, look, I'm not going to fail on this just because canola is really hard to solve for. We're going to keep at it, right? We're going to keep at it until we get this within an acceptable range that it adds value and does something for you. The reality is there's just a cost to that. That's all there is to it.
Absolutely. I also wonder, obviously, it helps you build trust with customers, but you also probably get a ton of value as far as the feedback loop of understanding the customer better, and helps you kind of grow the company in the right direction. Is there any particular example of kind of being out in the field and getting an aha that you could share with us? What made me think of this question is you talking about cotton. And if you've ever seen a recently harvested cotton field, there's cotton everywhere. And I don't know how much weight it adds up to be, but just the look of it, there's like white stuff all over the place. And so you wouldn't know that unless you were out there in the field. But I'm just curious, any specific instance that you can think of that you could share?
I would probably have to say it was with cotton and with peanuts. Fortunately, both of which are here in Georgia, so we didn't have to travel real far. But we did actually run peanuts in Argentina, because at the time of year that we were down there, they were running peanuts. So while we were there, we were like, all right, let's get over and look at it. And to your point earlier, it is a lot for us when we get out there. We get a lot of free advice from the farmers. I'm kind of like looking back at tech companies like, why wouldn't you want to get out with your customer and get all this free advice from them on how to better your own product? Because we learned in cotton that most farmers now, they don't own a cotton harvester. I mean, I think John Deere is the only one who makes one at this point. I could be wrong on that for anybody listening, but I think it's John Deere's the only one that makes one. But they're expensive machines because they're a specialty machine. So a lot of farmers, they contract that out. A lot of the cotton gins are the ones who actually do the harvesting. Or you have some decent sized, larger operations that they run multiple for their land, and then they contract themselves out to do it for others. So that was one thing that we learned about, that the farmer themselves, right? So that don't necessarily do it. That gets into the business model of, well, who's then going to be the one that would purchase Farmwave to see the value out of it? But then it's the plastic bags and balloons and trash that gets caught on like cotton branches and thorns on the edge of the bowl. This is a multi-million-dollar problem every year. We didn't know that. I had no idea. And that not only can get sucked into the machine and in the cotton within their own bale, but then that can contaminate other bales when it gets to the gin. Like it just keeps going, and it's a real problem. But then you see harvesters that have gone through the field, and sometimes it's like, did they harvest that field? I can't tell if they actually did it or not. There's still a lot of white back there. And they're like, yeah, that's the problem. Do I go back and do it again? Is it worth it? So there was a lot of like eye opening for us when it came to doing cotton, and peanuts were the same way. I thought soybeans were dusty. Peanuts are like insane. I mean, it was really dusty, especially if you have no breeze. But they roll them over first, and then they might sit for a couple of days in the U.S., maybe a couple weeks in the U.S., a couple of days in South America, and then they actually go harvest them and pick them up. But there's loss in both scenarios. When they roll them over, some peanuts just fall off the branches and they fall into that sort of windrow, and the harvester's not going to pick those up. So that's already loss. Then they go through when they do harvest them, and then there's some loss there too. So we have actually 2 points of loss in peanuts, which I didn't realize that either. And these are just different moments where you're like, it adds more value than you think in some of these areas, because you learn about how they're doing it.
I mean, and I think I said this to you last time we talked, but this is like the most significant and least sexy food loss and waste story that is just, people don't have any concept of, like how much scale there is here, how much volume there is here, how much there can be rescued. And, nothing against people who are like donating excess food. All that's important and good too. But like, that is like nothing compared to the potential here and what you're doing. I do wonder, and obviously a key part of your story is you guys getting out there in the field, developing this trust one combine at a time, sitting with them, walking them through it. But how do the farmers hear about you initially? Is it through farm shows, or what's working for the other, ag tech founders that are out there to kind of get on the radar of the decision makers in these farms?
Yeah, it's been a combination of getting to the shows, conferences, expos, right? Farm Progress has been pretty big for us. Commodity Classic was pretty big for us this past year. Those kinds of shows, people come by a booth and, we'll hear it a lot. I've never heard of you guys. What do you guys do? And we start telling them, and they kind of get it right away. But Twitter, people that are not in agriculture that I run in circles with in the tech world are like, Twitter, really? I'm like, farmers are on Twitter. I don't know. So they really are. And, we spend a lot of time putting effort into what we put on Twitter and stuff like that. And we've had people just direct message us, or direct message me or Jordan or Brian or somebody, and right on Twitter, and tell me more about this. Stuff comes in off of our website just randomly. Like in Lithuania, we got somebody reached out to us the other day. They're like a 45 location dealer in Lithuania. Like, oh, okay. And they were like really interested in what you guys are doing. Of course, when I get the pleasure to be on podcasts like yours and others that we try to spread the word around, but it's pretty organic growth. It really is. We're not big in like Google ads and stuff like that and trying to target different things. I think last year we ran some information in Successful Farming Magazine, which was helpful, but it's still pretty organic in how we sort of get the word out there. Of course, now getting into the dealer network, that's helping spread the word a lot. The dealers see value in what we're doing.
Yeah, let's talk about the dealer network. Has that always kind of been part of the vision, part of the strategy, is to develop this dealer network, or how did that come about, and how does that work exactly?
Yeah, it was always definitely part of the strategy. I mean, we can't do this alone, right? And farmers are really used to working with their trusted dealers, and that's who they're going to talk to about technology and about, tell me about this artificial intelligence stuff. Is it worth it, right? They're going to talk to their dealers about that. And so to have dealers, really invest in Farmwave and what we're doing, I think says a lot to their customers. There's a level of trust there already from their dealers, sort of saying, hey, we've kind of vetted these guys, and this really works and adds value. We still do sell direct to the farmer because we are still growing. If there are no dealers in your area, you can buy direct from us and just purchase a system, and we'll ship it to you. It's not very hard to install. It takes maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours at most. But the dealer network really took off in the past couple months, and we've been going out and doing dealer demo days that they're hosting, or in the spring they host different expos or things like showing new tech, to their customers, and they've asked us to come out and would you guys come to a demo and show us, how it works, or give us an overview. So that's really, really helped. But we still do we'll sell direct. If somebody doesn't have a dealer nearby and they just want to buy one from us, they can do that as well.
And what are you looking for in a new dealer? Are these people who maybe they sell seed and they want to add something to that business, or is this mostly like your more traditional kind of precision ag dealers in places?
It is mostly your precision ag dealers, your big machinery dealers, precision equipment, stuff like that. They see this kind of as an add-on to their portfolio. And some of them that they have service packages where they also help like calibrate, their combines before the season, assist them throughout the harvest season. They see a value add in Farmwave because now they can tap into the Farmwave dashboard remotely and get alerted if one of their customers has a ton of loss. And then they can pick them up and call them and be like, hey, Farmwave just alerted me you're losing like, 4 bushel off the, I'm making it up, left side of the header or whatever. What's going on? Did your conditions change? What are your settings at? That sometimes we've had some dealers, they've said that could save me a 2, 3, 4 hour drive by just being able to see that and troubleshoot remotely. But, dealers sometimes will, roll Farmwave into their service packages. We have one OEM that's looking to start selling their machinery with or without Farmwave. And if you want it with, then they install it right there at the factory floor, and it'll get delivered to you with Farmwave pre-existing, like on it, set up, and everything. So there's a lot of different benefits with the dealers that are going on right now.
That's really cool. Some of my favorite posts in kind of watching your guys' journey have been, you and other members of the team flying down to Brazil and Argentina and actually like seeing how things go down there. What have you learned about going to market in those markets, how it might be similar or different to the North American market?
Well, this year we added a SIM card to the system to allow some online functionality. Now, the Farmwave still works at the edge. You don't need to be connected to the cloud. But for that piece where I would just mention that dealers might get an alert remotely, something like that does require cell connectivity. But I was just outside Brasilia 2 months ago. It's like the end of nowhere. I mean, there's no service out there. So in some of those areas, the SIM card's not going to matter. There's just no coverage whatsoever. But obviously, huge swaths of land and some really big long runs that go on in places like Brazil. We have in the past had to tailor the AI a little bit, retrain some things. Here's an example. We had pretty high accuracy, 90+% accuracy in soybeans. We went down to Brazil. That accuracy dropped down to high 60, low 70 percentile. And we weren't really sure why. It turns out that just because of the humidity and the higher moisture, the soybeans were slightly larger than the ones they were trained on, the AI was trained on in the US. The AI actually picked that up and we did with the human eye. So we used that data, retrained those models, and by the next day, the accuracy shot back up to where it should be. So you get things like that in different environments and different conditions. But the flip side is the value is also sometimes a whole lot more. We have a calculator on the front page of our website. And when you get people who are putting in the price of soybeans and they do 600,000 hectares, it's multiples of millions in savings every year at a very conservative 3 to 8 more bushels per acre. So what we've seen down there is a high level of interest from large operations that are like, I have 26 combines. I want it on all of them.
26 combines. That is legit. Did I hear you right that you were able to make that adjustment within 24 hours? Like when you found out your accuracy dropped down to the 60s, you were able to change that and get it back up to where it should be within 24 hours?
That's correct. Yeah. Over the years of building this out, from the tech side of things, we figured out how to build our own pipeline generation. So in AI, it's sort of the data comes in and then how you curate the images, annotate the images, label them, and then run them through to train, and then, withhold a data set, run that through and see how it performs, and then retrain. We've automated that entire sequence that is typically done manually by people. So it took a lot of time, but we knew it would pay off in the end, that when it came to situations like this, we could take that data, quickly run it through, get it retrained, get the accuracy levels back up, and then push it to production over the air back to the system and get it back up to where it should be for the operator.
Wow. And as you've grown and now to multiple countries, how have you handled sort of customer support, customer success? What have been kind of the big learnings or any changes on that front?
We're still learning on that, I think, a little bit, but with the sort of redesign of the interface of Farmwave, once you power it on in the cab, it's literally start, pause, resume, and stop. That's it. There's 4 buttons. And you don't change screens. There's kind of a lot happening on the new main screen, but it's built so that you don't have to flip through screens or anything like that. The way we've tried to build it is that if you have a camera that goes offline or you get a cable that snaps or something, the RMA is just get them a new one and get the other one back and get them back up and running as fast as possible. So it's another cost that we absorb. Shipping, international shipping, and dealing with customs and stuff like that. If we've got to get something, down to Brazil, we just got to get it there, get it to the customer, and get them up and running as fast as possible. Yeah, there's a cost to us, but there's also a cost to us if we don't support our customer that's using our product. Like, we're just not about selling a product and then going away. We're here for you. Like, yeah, we sold you a product, but we're going to support it. We thoroughly believe in the value that it delivers you. We want you to keep seeing that value. We've had farmers with the new cameras that came out that were like, are you going to be like Apple? I have to buy new cameras next year and the new ones the year after that. And the answer is no. Actually, these cameras, we believe, have probably close to 10 years of development capability within them. If you look at the cameras today, the thing in the center is the actual camera, and then there's 2 stereo pair sensors on the side of the camera that can do depth sensing. And we haven't even begun to start moving into that yet. But we will. And when we do, we'll just push that as feature updates to the cameras. And there you go. You've got it. You just keep on going. The goal is to not be selling new hardware every year, because hardware it's awful. Like, I have to run inventory, and it's hard. Like, it's really, really hard for us. So we don't want to have to do that. We don't want them to have to deal with that. It's just about, let's get them back up and running. And so there's challenges, but we'll just take them head on.
Well, I want to get back to something you said earlier, which is the biggest problem in artificial intelligence right now is, you've got cool technology with no actual value to anyone out there. So what are the market forces actually driving a product or a business? I wonder with that, are the advancements in AI opening new opportunities for value? Do you see kind of with the rapid iterations in AI, new ideas that you might have or that you see others having of, okay, now we're actually getting to the point where we're coming up with something valuable here? Or is it always sort of, the market sort of leading the need for the solution?
I think that there's a lot of opportunities that certainly get opened up with artificial intelligence. And here's this thing that's been going on for years. Is AI going to steal my job? But then the other side of the story is what job? Because it doesn't seem like anybody's working. If I look around, I see hiring signs everywhere. So which is it? Is it stealing jobs, or everybody's hiring? Is it going to step in and help automate, right, certain jobs that we can't find people to do, which is a real problem in agriculture. The labor market is hard to find people. Farmers are like, I'm lucky enough to find somebody to show up every morning on time and just drive this combine, let alone be a skilled operator that knows how to check for loss and what to manipulate on the machine to reduce loss. So in that capacity, Farmwave is a huge value add to help assist, like AI assist, which is, I think, where it's all really starting. AI is assisting people. It's assisting jobs and functions and how to get things done better, because, there's a lack of labor out there to do certain jobs. But it's also about waste. And that was how we looked at the problem. You see it in a lot of marketing slides, and you hear it at many conferences. We have to produce more food by the year 2050 than we have in the last blah, blah, blah. Okay, everybody's like, produce more, produce more, produce more. What about waste less? How about that? And that's how we started to look at it. What about wasting less? Because according to the statistics that we pull off the USDA website, after all the combines have gone through the field every year in the United States, and let's say just corn, we'll just pick one crop, and what was put down that they all planted and what was harvested we leave close to $3 billion worth of corn in the field. And that's just the United States, just corn, just 1 year. So what does that look like in multiple crops around the world every year? It's a huge number. So there's a ton of opportunity for artificial intelligence to help. Same thing in spraying. I mean, we see that, outside of what Farmwave is doing, we're seeing tons of people that are making strides in sprayer technology to spot spray and reduce the amount of chemicals that are used. And that saves right on the bottom line of the farmer. But what are the force multiplier value adds of that, in addition to just saving the pocketbook of the farmer? Well, maybe it's less chemicals that we're spraying in the field. Maybe it's changes this or that factor. I can't think of something at the moment, but there's these other, force multiplier value adds that happen through artificial intelligence when you do something like that. I think that there's a ton of opportunity for that. The fear of AI is in a lot of ways, in my opinion, I think it's overblown in a lot of circumstances. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be responsible in how we continue to build artificial intelligence and the decisions that it makes. But as we've seen in the past couple of years with things like OpenAI and Bard and others, they just, in a week or 2 weeks' time, they just became the most popular thing around the world. And now it's calmed down a little bit because people are going, oh yeah, I got this wrong and I got that wrong. And yeah, it's not perfect, right? And I think that's probably the other thing. People expect AI to be perfect. We get a lot of people who they'll see Farmwave take a picture, and in the picture there's, I'm going to make up a number, 19 kernels, and they go, oh, Farmwave only counted 17. It doesn't work. You're wrong. Well, if that's how you want to look at it, right? There could be a lot of different variables into why it didn't catch those 2 kernels in that picture. But we caught the majority of them. And we're doing it how many times an acre? And when you have to make a change, you can also, without stopping, see whether that change had an impact or not. It's about the trends. It's about looking at the long term, right? Whether it's in agriculture, with Farmwave, in manufacturing or whatever, how is it affecting the long term and the trends that are going to change in those processes and those methodologies by incorporating artificial intelligence, and more specifically by first using assisted artificial intelligence. I think that's what people need to look at. You do have, it's just going to happen. You have your people that look at it and be like, oh, you missed one, doesn't work. Okay. I mean, if that's how you want to look at it. But I think we have to really have a realistic approach and look at it as, all right, what is the average outcome? Can I really count 144 times per acre? I can't do that. I don't have all day to do that. Can I take 12 to 20,000 images, a day? No. So I'm gaining a lot of value here by this. And I think that plays out in other industries and other technology solutions and so on.
Well, that is going to do it for today's episode. Really enjoyed that conversation with Craig Ganssle. I think in between the lines in that conversation, there's some real insight into what criteria we should be evaluating problems in agriculture that could use, artificial intelligence. Some things that I jotted down after I spoke with Craig. Number one, they're addressing a very dynamic problem, right? This loss is coming from different places. It looks different ways. It's happening at varying velocities. In some cases, it's very intense. And it's just too much for us to obviously track with a human eye and count like individual, losses off of a combine. It's also, data that can be utilized in real time. There's actually something a farmer can do in real time to adjust for it and account for it. And that leads to other important things for all ag tech companies, which is obviously a clear return on investment. You know exactly how much you're saving because you know what bushels you have that you wouldn't have had otherwise, right? It also seamlessly integrates into user behavior. This is something we don't talk about enough when it talks about ag tech adoption. Is if you want the customer to do a bunch of new stuff or do things in a new way, it probably is not going to happen. This requires no change in harvesting. In fact, it requires less time getting out of the combine to check, and so it makes things easier. And that's another point. Saves time, avoids a headache. It is a real pain point that farmers can really relate to. So if you're all interested in Farmwave, highly suggest you go check out their website, farmwave.io, just farmwave.io. Maybe you're a farmer that's looking for this. this. Maybe you're somebody who'd make a great dealer for them. Either way, go get in touch with Craig. Tell him you enjoyed him on the podcast, and let him know that you're glad Farmwave is sponsoring the future of agriculture. I'm sure it'd mean a lot to him. I know it would mean a lot to me as well. So thank you to Farmwave, and most of all, thank you for your time and your attention. I don't take it lightly. I'll be back next week with another story of ag innovation.